All right, so here's my CB with a aquapovic exhaust, and I have a O2 sensor welded in right here. All right, get the O2 sensor in there, and I also have a I modified the DB plug, the insert, the noise insert. So I actually restricted it so that way it's as far as how much it flows. Obviously it flows less than the aquapovic insert, but at the same time it flows more than the factory exhaust. So I think as far as flow goes, it flows about 1.5 times the factory exhaust, whereas the aquapovic exhaust, it flows about 3 times the stock exhaust. So basically what number I'm giving you guys is the cross-sectional surface area of the actual opening. Okay, so here, like I said, I have the O2 sensor, so it's it's plugged up to my my lambda gauge right here. Let's turn this on. So I have this on with the with this basically factory engine, except for the aquapovic exhaust. And I ran it for for a while just to see what the numbers read. Then now I have and you saw my video probably several weeks ago, maybe a couple months now, that I put in a high piston JE high compression piston. So that piston was designed for the 250 engine. So in the 250, that piston has I think it's 11:1 compression ratio. Is that right? 11:1? Yeah, I think it's 11:1, or is it 11:2 to 1, something like that. Anyways, I forget exactly what it was. But I think it was 11. But anyways, the stock piston on the 250 is shoot, what's stock piston now? I can't remember. It was I think it was 10.7. So this is the 300. So the 300 also has a 10.7 compression ratio. So same as the 250 compression ratio. But if you use a 250 piston in a 300 in the 300 engine, because of the extra stroker crank, so the piston goes up higher, it actually increases the compression ratio from the 250, whatever it is, that was designed for the 250. In the 300, it increases about 1.5 compression ratio. So if that JE piston was an 11:1 compression ratio for the 250, in the I think that's what it was. It was 11:1 in the 250. In the 300, it becomes 12.1. So you're adding 1.5. So 11 plus 1.5 is 12.5 basically. So basically it's the piston compression ratio I have now is approximately 12.5 to 1 ratio. So it's pretty high. What I should have done was I should have got the lower one. I should have got the same. I should have got the forged piston that was the same as the stock for the 250. So if it was stock 250, it's 10.7 plus 1.5. That would be let's see, 11.7. It would be 12.2. So it'd be it'd be a little bit less. But anyways, let's look at the numbers here. So like I mentioned, the numbers here. Oops, I'm gonna turn it on down here. Turn this on. So I have it connected to my electric heater. Oops, not even plugged in right here. Let me plug this in. Have the gauge connected to my electric heater. Turn that on. Oops, not on. I think my electric heater, this on-off switch here, the wires here are getting kind of old, so I think the wire is like starting to break. So there's an open circuit instead of a closed circuit. Let's see. You see my gauge still on there. This one is not on though. Is it on? No, actually no, that's off. That's on. There it goes. Here we go. So anyway, right now whatever the compression is, or excuse me, whatever the F ratio is, it should go it should go up, not down. Why is it going down? Yeah, because it went up. So it's it's lean right now basically, right? Let me reset the mileage here. Oops. Okay, reset my mileage. Actually, what miles do I have on this bike right now? I have oops, wrong one. Miles per gallon. Average mile per gallon, gallons used. Let me leave it at gallons used. I have this thing at 7,500 miles. So 7,500 miles. I've had this piston in here a little bit past 7. I think I only have it in here for maybe about, probably about 500 miles or a little bit less than 500 miles. So somewhere around just after 7,000 miles did I install the piston. So I have, around 500 miles or so, or maybe a little less than that. All right, so let's turn this on. Let's see, it's in neutral. No, it's not in neutral. Put it in neutral real fast. Okay, there it is, neutral. See how lean it is. So if this right here goes to the number 1, that means it's if it goes to number 1, that means it's at stoic. So it's idle. Idle's lean. Right now the bike's warming up, so that's why it's showing it's richer. But when the enrichment circuit turns off, this will actually become leaner. I think it hangs around 17 air-fuel ratio, about 17 to 1. Right? Once it settles down, when it gets to about 18 or so, that's when the engine will actually stall out. And I've had that happen, I think, about twice now. Ever since I put in this this piston. But prior to putting in this piston, it was actually, everything was just right. The air-fuel ratio was at idle. It was just above stoic. It was around 15. The air-fuel ratio was just around 15. So there it goes. Now it's starting to settle in, and now it's gonna stay. It's gonna stabilize around 7 or so, or excuse me, 17 or so, give or take a little. If it ever goes to 18, that's when it stalls. Once it stalls, you can actually hear it. But anyways, so before putting in the piston, it was stabilized around 15, which is just above stoic. But when I was actually riding around, if I held the throttle constant, it would stay at about stoic, give or take a little bit. And when I open it up more, it would actually drop below stoic, which is that's normal. That's what you want, because when you open it up, you want power, right? So to get more power, you get more. You have to go richer. That's why it drops down. So you hear the engine kind of unstable because it's getting richer. I mean leaner. Stayed at stoic when I kept the throttle constant, and that's how it is when I'm actually riding too. If I just open it real fast, it'll go richer, and you can see that. See that? So anyways, let me turn off the noise. So anyways, yeah, so at the stock setting, it was running, everything was running really good. It was like, you don't need to do anything with the fueling. So people were like asking me about, oh, should I get get a dial tune or whatever, this and that and all this stuff. I'm like, no, just leave it as is. Stock fueling is perfect. You want, when you're just at constant, you want to be at stoic, and when you're giving it more power, give it more gas, you want to go a little bit richer. At stock setting, it was going down to, when you give it, wherever you're at, you go wide open throttle, it goes down to about 13 to 1 compression ratio, which is actually ideal. That's where the highest, was it 13 to 1? I think it was 13 to 1, or just a little bit below that. 13 to 1 is about where the peak power is. But ever since I put in this piston, it's changed a little bit. It still pretty much stays pretty constant at stoic when you constant throttle. When you give it more, full throttle at whatever speed you're going, it will drop down to. It stays around 13, somewhere between 13 and 12. Also, but if you're idling, that's when it goes lean. That's when it goes to 17 plus. So that's the only time the setup I have where it goes lean is at idle. with the stock piston, it didn't really go lean. It stayed at 15, which is, you know, pretty close to historic. So that's fine. So that's the only problem with using this high compression piston is at idle. It's where it's not getting, you know, it should be slightly richer, just that way it doesn't have problem idling. But everything else is, you know, as far as, you know, where you're under, you know, what load you're at, what RPM you're at, doesn't matter if you're a light load, heavy load, uphill, downhill, whatever. The air-fuel ratio is just right. It's only at idle where the air-fuel ratio is lean. So yeah, so everything works good. And as far as power wise, it's barely noticeable. I could barely feel it. Most people won't. Usually when you increase power, and if you only increase a little bit of power, you won't really notice it. The time that you will notice it is when you actually take it away. That's when you're like, oh, where I could have swore it was like a little bit oomphier. It had a little bit more oomph before. So that's the difference in just this little bit of power. Though, so in that regard, it doesn't really, you know, for all significant differences, it doesn't really make a difference. Where it does make a difference in this high compression piston that I'm using is the efficiency. It actually increased about 10%. So what the hell does that mean? It means my gas mileage increased about 10%. So I'm doing the same riding, whatever I'm doing, and this you have to realize that, you know, I'm gonna have about 500 miles on this piston. And then when I put in the new piston, I'll also put in a new cylinder as well. So this piston cylinder is still breaking in. So it's not broken in yet. So it's not fully efficient yet, right? Because a broken in engine is a little bit more smoother, a little bit more efficient than a unbroken in engine. So anyways, I noticed about a 10% increase in fuel mileage compared to what it was before with the stock piston and cylinder. And that's not just a difference because because this is new and being broken in, I'm taking it easy. So when I was taking it easy, when the bike was brand new, it was still getting, you know, 10% less gas mileage than it is right now. And actually, ever since I got to like past 300 miles on this new high compression piston, I actually started to ride it like normal, like I would normally do. And I'm still getting, you know, approximately 10% more efficiency, even running it hard compared, you know, riding it harder. Overall, just 10% more efficiency. So I'm really digging that. But then again, you know, you look at using this high compression piston, you're getting you have to use high octane. You can't use regular octane anymore because that 12-to-1 is too high. You know, you will get pinging and pre-detonation, right? So you damage your engine, so you have to use high octane. So the cost of high octane is unfortunately costs more than 10%. You know, high octane is about what, at least 30 cents, if not 50 cents more than regular. Right now, I think the last time I poured gas, regular was about $3.20, and so that was 87. 87 octane was about $3.20, and 91 octane was about $3.50 or so, or maybe a little bit more. So that right there is that's about 10%. 30 cents difference out of $3 is about 10%. So it's at least, you know, it kind of breaks even as far as cost of gas mileage versus cost of using premium fuel. But the cool thing about this high of gas mileage is that because this tank is a small tank, right? It only has a 2.5 gallon gas tank. So 2.5 gallons is not much. So because I'm getting 10% more fuel mileage, I could go, you know, that much more miles. So before on one tank of gas, depending on how I rode, the worst gas mileage I ever got on this bike was actually in Mexico, riding wide open freeway speeds, wide open pretty much the whole time. The worst fuel mileage I ever got was, I think, 100 and maybe 120 or so, 130 miles on a tank, 130 miles on 2.5 gallons. So that's not much. And the best fuel mileage I ever got out of this tank was, I think, 180 at least, if not more, if not almost 200 miles on a tank. So whatever that is, you know, add 10% to that. So 130, 10% of 130 is another another 13 miles or so. So I should be able to get at least 140 miles on a full tank now. And if that's riding it hard and fast, if I were to take it easy, I'm pretty sure I could get, for sure, I could get 200 miles on a tank because it's a little bit more efficient. So that's the main takeaway from using this piston. It's not about more power necessarily. It's more compression does give you more power, but it gives you more efficiency. So that's if you look at diesel trucks, for example. Why do diesel trucks get such good gas mileage? Because they run really high compression ratio. That's why they get really good gas mileage for their size, for the load they're carrying. And that's why diesel trucks diesel engines are used for transporting goods. It's because of their higher efficiency. Diesel engines have like a 40 plus % efficiency. Whereas gas mileage, they don't, unless you're talking about like a Prius or the Mazda Skyactiv X engine. Those ones are in the 40 plus % range, but the regular engines are not. Regular engines are like 30% or something like that. And this bike is probably only like, at best, it's 30% efficiency. But with that higher compression, it raises my efficiency up a little bit. So that's a good thing about it. So yeah, so don't think of this as of using a high compression piston as adding more power. Think of it as getting more efficiency out of your gas, basically. And the really interesting thing is that when I actually use some pure gas instead of because the gas is basically 10% ethanol, right? So when I use pure gas, oh my god, I couldn't believe the numbers. I looked at the numbers and at first I thought I was made a mistake when I did the calculations. When I used 100% gas, I was getting like 99 miles or almost 100 miles per gallon. I was like, what the hell, is that right? And I had to like calculate that several times, but it was right. It was like, I was like, holy shit, that's how much my scooter gets. That's how much my mini bikes get, 100 miles a gallon. So I couldn't believe it when I saw that number. I was like, whoa, shit. But then around here, unfortunately, you can't really find pure gas unless you're using race gas. But you go out of state, outside of California, like up in Oregon and stuff, they have gas stations that have pure gas, and it's basically it's not much difference in price as far as gas goes compared to 10% ethanol. But here in California, if you find something that's pure gas, the only time that you can find that is if it's race gas, and race gas is like easily double the price of 10% ethanol gas. So economically speaking, it's not worth it. But if you for whatever reason you need to have you're riding somewhere in a very secluded area, and we get that out in the west here a lot. When you ride out in the desert and stuff, in the rural areas, you could go easily 100 miles between gas stations, and sometimes even more than that. There's been times where I've gone 200 miles between gas stations, and on this bike, 200 miles between gas station is pushing it. On a stock bike, you have to you're in 6th gear, and you have to be going like 50 miles an hour to be able to get 200 miles out of a full tank of gas. But with that pure gas, you could do it, and you still have to go slow. You can't be going 80 miles an hour. You still have to go that 50 miles an hour, but you're more confident in making sure that you can make that distance without running out of gas. So that's a takeaway from the piston setup. So do I recommend doing it? I would say no, because that piston setup right there, that's already $200 for that JE piston, high compression piston and rings and the whole setup. I did add a new cylinder, but you don't have to buy a new cylinder. You can reuse your old one, but the new cylinder is actually not that much. The new cylinder is like it's less than $100. It's like God, how much was it? I think it was like $80 or something like that. Anyways, it's less than $100 for a new cylinder. So basically this costs me basically $300, right? To do this mod. So it wasn't that expensive, but it was a lot of labor. The actual part where you actually change it out, that's the easy part. The hard part is taking all this crap off, taking all the gas tank off, taking the battery box off in the carburetor, not the carburetor, the fuel injector, or the header, all that stuff. Taking all the stuff, that stuff is where it's a lot of work. So that's where if you can't do it yourself, this is definitely not worth it. If you can't do it yourself, if you can do it yourself, it's worth it. not for any type of savings in gas that you get, because I don't think that's worth it. You know, because $300 is a lot of freaking gas you could buy, right? So that where it's worth it is the learning experience. So if you've never done something like this before, you know, since this is a single cylinder engine, it's a lot easier than multi-high cylinder. Less things to go wrong. So if you want to get your feet wet in starting doing stuff, this is a great opportunity for that. And in that sense, it's totally worth that $300. But if you do that, I suggest you get the service manual. If you don't know what you're doing, and I have a service manual, and I've done this before. I you know, this is not my first 300. I had the CB300F, you know, the previous model, right? And I did the same thing on that bike as well. But the main thing you want with the service manual is the service manual gives you torque specs for the engine. So because when you put this back together, yeah, you have to make sure your torques are right. Otherwise, you know, you could destroy the engine if your torque is not proper for all those, you know, all the nuts and bolts and everything. So yeah, so economically, I say no, it's not worth it. But just from the learning experience, especially if you're new to you know, modifying bikes and engines and stuff, the learning experience is definitely worth that $300. For me, I like to kind of mess with things, to tinker basically. So in that regards, you know, that's kind of like a hobby of mine, an interest. So you know, hobbies are all about putting money into right? Yeah, no one has a hobby to make money. You know, hobbies are there to take money away from you. So that's that. You know, so basically a hobby is entertainment, right? So $300 entertainment essentially is what this is. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about it. So all right, so no, it's not worth it economically speaking. Even power wise, it's only worth it for shits and giggles. And that's about it. All right, thanks for watching.